Hi, welcome to this new session of Developer Skill Sprints. My name is Marco Cantu and I'm here to present how to add advertising to your mobile applications to earn some money out of them. If you haven't seen these skill sprints, it's a set of focused sessions, very short and devoted to one single specific area of their product. And so again, in this specific session, we're going to focus on advertising. I'm going to provide links to discussions, blogs, and we'll follow up the session with a live Q&A. So why mobile advertising? The mobile advertising business is huge and growing. The growth in 2013 was 105%. So that's not 5%, is 105%, so it doubled. And the estimate for this year is another 75% increase to something close to $30 billion. So it's a huge potential. The fact that it leverages the easy app distribution through the app stores implies you don't have to set up any architecture or infrastructure to distribute thousands or even millions of copies of your applications and monetize them through advertising. Now, of course, there are other models like selling the application or in-app purchase, but the focus here is on advertising. Google is leading, Facebook is second, Apple is kind of trailing in this area. And notice there's never been anything similar on Windows. There's been some tentatives of advertising through in Windows apps, but nothing really successful at all. So specifically, if you have a non-business application, it's a great way to monetize. There are two advertising architectures I'm going to focus on and supported by Red Studio. These are AdMob on the Google platform and IAD on the iOS platform. So how you set up mobile advertising? In X6, it's actually quite straightforward because all you have to do is to drop a T-Add Banner component, generally align it to the bottom or the top of your form, configure it, and do one single call, which is the load advertising call. That's generally done the first time a form is displayed, if that form has the advertising banner. On Google Advertising Network, there's one extra step, which is you need to set a property. It's called banner ID or ad unit ID, which is the information you have to give to Google. Because what happens on the Google AdMob is you can actually have multiple different banners, even in a single application, and so you can track which of these banners is earning you more money. On the iAd network, it's the application ID only that's required, so there's basically no configuration. The other thing you have to do and to take care of is that on Google, the advertising banner is not technically part of your form, but is like superimposed on your form. So you have to make room for it in your form and or even in other forms, because it will remain on top of other forms as well. Let me show you the configuration in an actual demo, which is not part of the product demos. There is one I mentioned later, but it's actually a real-world application that I've built and I've used advertising in. So there is a form here, and this form has the banner ad component. There is basically no specific configuration. I've picked automatic advertising size and just basically let everything by default and aligned the component to the bottom. Now when the form is shown for the first time, what I do is set the add unit ID property of the banner ad, and this is a number that Google AdMob configuration gives you. On iOS it's ignored, so you can still leave it in the code, doesn't really matter. And then the next function is to enable the advertising. You have to do load ad. Now what I have to do here, it is the following two lines. Since I have two other forms and I have one single ad that is going to remain visible throughout the application, what I do is I give some room to corresponding banner ad component that I have on the other forms. They are basically just placeholders, they're not really activated, but they make sure that there is no content hidden behind my ad, basically by shrinking the form size with a placeholder component. That's basically the code you have to write. With this code, you have the user interface hosting the advertising. Notice how I do it only the first time. Then after I've set, I'm using the value of this banner, of this add unit ID to figure out if I've already configured the ad. And so the second time the form is displayed, this code is not executed. Now there are two more things that you have to consider. One is that you on Android, you have to customize the manifest for the application by customizing the template, and you need to add this extra line indicating that there is advertising activity. So this is the extra line for the configuration of the ad. Otherwise, the ad will not show up. So this is a custom line you have to add. It's a second activity part of your application. That's the Google configuration. On iOS, there is one specific configuration. If we go to project options and go to the linker properties, you need to force the inclusion of two frameworks, IAD and StoreKit, at the linker level. As we will release the update 1 for Axis 6, this will become automatic and won't be required to do this manual operation. But at the moment, before update 1, you have to manually provide these two options to the linker. Now with this code, we are in business. We can just run the application and the application will show advertising in its form. Let me show this to you. So this is the application running on my phone, and you can see that there is advertising at the bottom, and I can move from page to page. And the ad will just stay there. And on the other side, I have the same application running on my iPod. And again, you can move from page to page and get actually different advertising showing up on the various pages. this is the developer configured, so you don't get real advertising, but only a placeholder. So this is the configuration code. Relatively easy to set up in terms of code in your Delphi or C++ Builder application. Quite complex to configure in terms of configuration, agreements. You have to go through a number of steps, fill text forms, enter your bank information. It's a rather long process, both on AdMob and on iAd. For AdMob, you also need to create ad units, while on iOS, you need to create the app entry in the store even before you try it on your device, because that's the condition to be able to serve advertising. So you can create an entry in the App Store and do not send the application, but you need the entry with the app ID before you can actually get any advertising to display. For AdMob, you need to go to the AdMob configuration, and then you have to list to add your Google Play application to AdMob, and then you can press that new ad unit button and create your one or more ad units. And that's the number then eventually you'll have to enter into your banner ad component in FireMonkey. The second part is the detail. And in the detail, you can configure things like refresh. So rather than reloading the ad every minute or so, you can just automatically set a refresh. You can change the ad style. There are a few options, and you can give it a name just as a reference for you in the collection of ads. That's just a local configuration name. That's it. So once you have this configuration set up, you can just sit back, relax, and pile the money. Of course, you need to have an application with a good distribution before you can actually make money. But after my experiments, I can say that after a couple of months, the amount of money is about 10 times what I was planning and expecting, which is quite interesting, I had to say. My impression, I don't have hard data, but this combination works much better on Android than it works on iOS, but I've just submitted my app on the iOS as well, so in a couple of months I will be able to get a better feeling of the two alternatives. Some references for a working demo. The issue is you need a store app. So while there is this Capital app with advertising available both for Object Pascal and C++, it will not work per se because you need to take a similar code, create the app listing, configure the advertising engine. So it's not something you can try out directly or immediately. Of course, one way is to get my application, which is public on the App Store, and try it out if that means anything. There is a tutorial on DocWiki on how to set up and configure things. There is a blog post that I wrote. That's it for this developers sprint. Next time, we'll see how to create and consume custom REST APIs, provide data to your mobile and desktop applications, and well, how to make that data available. That's next week on June 17th. Remember, you can download the Axis 6 trial to have a look at how the advertising works in the FireMonkey mobile applications. And now let's open for questions.
So there are a few questions, Marco. Sayat asks, are you going to be able to share the source code for your minifigures project?
No, actually the entire source code, no. But again, the advertising is really only those 3 lines that I was displaying. There's really nothing else for setting up the advertising. And the same code is also in the demo that ships with the product. Again, the thing that makes it slightly complex is even to get to the point you can actually, I mean, if you have the source code, to get to the point that you actually can see the advertising running on either iOS or Android, you need to create the application, put it in the App Store, at least create the listing, sign all of these contracts. So the process is actually quite a long process just to get a demo running. And if the application is not on the App Store or hasn't got the App Store ID, so even if you recompile an application from someone else, you won't get the advertising because you don't have the proper signature in the app.
Okay. And Tom asked a question about, and Stephen put in the answer. He was asking why you used form show instead of form create.
I think, oh no, I know what I did it because I actually create the application. I create the forms behind the scenes. So this application starts. There's actually another blog post on my site that describes that step.
Oh, the splash screen kind of thing?
Yeah, it's kind of a splash screen. So one of the two forms, the one with all of the Lego images, it loads 120 images in a bunch of grids. So it takes like 20 seconds to load. So what I'm doing is actually creating the main splash screen, creating those in the background, and then don't display them. Now, at that point, I don't want to get the advertising. The advertising should show up only when you're actually displaying one of the two secondary forms. And so that's why I've been using on show, because I don't want to get the advertising started until you're actually going to one of the two secondary forms. That was the idea. Of course, I could have moved the advertising to the main form, to the splash screen / main form. That would have been another option.
Okay. Let's see. Can we? Oh, there's a. Let's see. Vishas asks, can you create advertising for VCL? Is there a way to get to these APIs in a VCL app? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. I know there are other advertising chains, advertising services for Windows, but from what I know, they're like close to no money on those services. So it's really kind of a mobile thing.
Yep.
So is the revenue for clicks and impressions, or just clicks, or how does that work?
No, the revenue is only for clicks on both systems. So they all have a pay-per-click model.
And is it a flat model as far as how much revenue is per click, or is it changed by ad?
No, I honestly haven't delved too much into it. I think it is based by app. It's more or less like the traditional model that Google had on websites, the AdWords model. So a company that wants to advertise can buy keywords or topic or areas and offer more or less money. The other issue, and I have actually never seen it on AdMob, but I've seen it on iOS, is that on iOS they don't have 100% fill rate. So at times you might be looking for an ad and there's no ad available, so you don't get an ad. So they claim they have like 75–80% fill rate. While on Google it's 100% fill rate. So for every advertising option there is an ad available.
Now, did you get an event on iOS to let you know if you don't get an ad fill?
No, I don't think so. It might be at the low, certainly not at our component, it might be at the low level, but I haven't actually looked into it.
Is there an event when the ad's refreshed?
No, I don't think there's that either, because it's managed completely by the server-side system. So you configure the amount of minutes for refresh on the AdMob side, not on your application. It's not application driven.
And so you configure someplace the keywords for the kind of ads you want to have displayed?
No, absolutely. It's all completely automatic. So depending on your application, depending on which ads are being clicked, they probably serve similar ads. Or the application category or the application own text might have some influence, but it's not really documented.
Okay.
So you don't have control over. You can't say you can only want game ads or only want.
Yeah, no, there is filtering. So you can say no casino, no alcohol, no drug. I mean, none. You can skip some of the advertising. Like for example, this is a game for kids, so I've bailed out of some of the advertising that are not appropriate. So but again, it's similar to what you do when you do AdWords or other advertising services. You can filter out some broad categories, but it's not that you join in a specific category. So you can say this is for games. You can say it's not for online gambling, for example. Which I think is by default. So
where does the money come into? Do you have to have a U.S. account, or does it PayPal?
No, I think both Google and Apple actually support Italian bank accounts, and probably throughout most European countries. They, of course, support US. They don't offer things like PayPal payments or Bitcoins or anything other advanced, as far as I've seen. They tend to require you to have a real traditional bank account. It's not universal. I mean, there are countries in the world where if you live in those countries, you might not be able to have an account. I honestly haven't really looked into it. And the other side is that you get a lot of information about about your ads, display, request. I mean, there's actually a lot of data on the advertising side.
Okay, I was catching up on another sort of repeated question. Let's see.
Here's what I'm not sure what it says. Can the advert be linked with the user context? Thus, can the advert be made relevant to the activity the user is doing on the application? Okay, yeah, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. So,
no, not really. You have no control. There is something, but I'm not honestly 100% sure. There is something in the on the Apple platform that's not for advertising, but actually for applications in general. That if you do anything tracking the application, the user ID or device ID, you have to declare it on your app, and they kind of don't want you to do that. So of course Google does know who's the user and his preferences, so they might try to send the proper advertising. But again, you really have like almost no control at all.
Do they understand ad type as far as like different sizes, or do all the ads have to be the same size?
You can check some sizes. Like for example, you can ask for a banner, but you don't have. You can say those many pixels. So you ask for a banner, and then when you load the ad, there is an option in the component to get the auto sizing. And so after the ad has been loaded, which is actually what I was doing in my code, you can check the height of the T-banner ad object, and that's the number of pixels it's using. So if you have to move other things around the screen, you can know after the ad has finished displaying, and there is an event for that, you know that actually it's not even after it is displayed, it's when you do the load. It configures the ad size. So the following line of code, you can know which is the exact height. And at times, like you might have the banner might not take the entire screen width, might have a few pixels on either side, or things like that, which are not ideal. But again, that's platform, so there is not much you can do. There is another form of ads, which is called interstitial ads. They are like a full screen video ads and those things that Google is pushing because they claim the return is much higher, but they require different and new AdMob infrastructure, which we currently don't support. We will support it soon, and really considering making it available for x86 developers as well as a fix, because from August onwards, the current old API will be partially disabled by Google. So we're going to provide a fix in time for to keep applications active on the AdMob network.
So Tom points out that he said the fill rate on his iOS test app was abysmal. It seems like I heard that when your app is in test mode, they don't fill it.
No, in test mode, if the app is on a device as how you say, because you own the device and it's configured, so it's not the app downloaded from the App Store, you never get to see an ad. It's only a placeholder. That's different from Google. Google, you actually get to see the advertising, and I think that if you give it to like a few friends, just a direct APK installation, you can actually make money, even if it's not. It has to be, well, no, it has to be on the App Store, but even if it's not the version from the App Store, and it's a direct installation, then you get the advertising and the money and everything. Of course, they do track like too many ads on the same IP and all of these things to avoid any scam or any trick.
Yeah. Joe was asking about is there ads for OS 10? He seems to think there's the same framework API. I haven't looked at OS 10 or is there an iAd framework for OS 10?
There might as well be. I don't think we support it, but I actually haven't looked into it yet. Again, it doesn't. I mean, the mobile platform is really a good platform for ads, and to me, much more than the web open platform. So I really don't know if there would be a way, although if there is even today a way to get some monetization through ads on desktop. But to me, is really mobile where a lot of money is moving.
So Tom elaborated on his comment.
Sure.
And said that by test app, he means one that doesn't do anything serious. It was in the App Store. It was real app people have downloaded, but the fill rate is awful. Now you're saying that the fill is based on the content about the listing of the app?
I really don't know. And again, my app has been on, this app has been on Apple Store for like a week or so. So I'm not really sure. It might be that that's the issue. I was actually looking at the fill rate. Yeah, it's kind of odd. It depends by country. Some countries have 100% fill rate. Others are much lower.
Yeah, I was telling Tommy, he can always check with Apple. I mean, there's a developer interface that you can ask them questions when you see something going on. Laszlo left, but he had a question. He says, form show code executes only once. Is that true?
No, if I do show the form again.
Yeah, if you show the form again, in fact, you're putting different form or...
Because that application has 3 forms, and I don't create and destroy them. I just you click one and move from one to the other by showing, so putting it on up front on the Z order, one of the forms. So that's how that application works. And I think it is correct because at the first time, of course, I forgot doing that if test. And what was happening is I was getting like a new ad on top of the other ad, and that was kind of confusing and also kind of ugly looking. Because at times the ad just kind of comes down from the top of the application and moves, has like an animation effect, the ad display. And so the first time is okay, but like having that repeated was really ugly. So I just applied that as a fix.
Did you see Joe's comment, Jim, about...
Yeah, he says on iOS, a developer can change the fill rate by changing developer settings for testing purposes?
I don't know. I might have again. I have a very limited experience on the iOS side, so
I found my experiences with a lot of the stuff is that when you do it, then you learn so much more than when you talk about it because it's
the application still has like less than 100 users, so even statistically it's not really relevant. Like on Android, it has like an average of active, people in the latest versions, 10,000 users. So there the numbers are more even, and again, you get real stats out of like few thousand users compared to a couple dozens.
There was a comment about being able to retire just on ad revenue. And I was saying, well, just create the next Candy Crush or Words with Friends or whatever the most.
Yeah. There's another stat that originally had in the slides, but then I moved the announcement that was the first quarter this year. Candy Crush, Kings, which is the owner of Candy Crush, but basically they have one application. They made more money than the software division of Nintendo, which is like a big most. I mean, Mario Bros. And all of that stuff. With a single online game, this company made more money, which is absolutely impressive.
Paul asked a couple of questions about can he have a what was it, full screen, or can you control where the ad banner? But go ahead and I'll do some typing here.
So he says he has a app with an T ad banner with AdMob, and he said he's noticed that it floats on top of all the forms once it's created, as you discussed. So can you change that behavior, for example, to hide the advertisement?
Not directly, because the ad is a separate activity, so it's not exactly another application because it's in the same application space, but it's handled completely separately by the operating system. So it's not fully integrated in the FireMonkey form, but it's kind of like a form on top of it. Now it should be possible to hide it, but honestly, that's not something I've personally tried. So it might be necessary to do some low-level calls to do the hiding, rather than just hide the component or do something simple.
So yeah, and so it's always visible then once your app has started?
That's the default, yeah. That's the standard behavior. You start it up, and it's basically it's like a window on top of your window.
So is there a way to have the ad display full screen, like between actions?
No, because the full screen ads are a specific type of ads. I think Google calls them interstitial ads.
Yep.
And those ads require a specific API, which we currently don't implement. So it's possible, of course, by hooking to the actually it's a Play Store API. It's the new Play Store API. We are still using the old AdMob API, which is the one that's going to be retired on August 1st. So before August 1st, we are going to release an update or hotfix or some form of support to migrate the banner ad to the new API. Now, by itself, you don't get the extra features because we're just going to make the standard features available. But by going through the Play Store API, it probably will become easier to add these other type of advertising. But then it's something that by hooking to the API, it's doable today.
Okay. Now you mentioned that their update 1 is going to have some fixes in it, but update 1's not out yet, so.
No, update 1 is not out yet. It should be out in a short amount of time. The fix that it's going to have is the one for iOS. If today you take an iOS application and you compile it, you actually get an error because it cannot find an API, because the library is not linked automatically to a project. So the idea was to manually link it. Now we switched to like always linking in the library in. It's not making the application bigger. It's a runtime link of a library that is part of the operating system. So there are those two command line items you need to pass to the linker today, but once you'll have update 1, those won't be required anymore.
Does each app require a unique ad ID number, or can you share one ad ID among many apps?
No, I haven't tried actually. For now, I have one application with a couple of ads. On AdMob, you have to create an AdMob account, which is separate from the account you publish on the Play Store. And at that point, you can associate the two accounts. It's your username, so it's your Google email or whatever. So you create another account. You have to create an AdMob. You have to import your applications into AdMob and then add an ad unit. So the ad unit is specific to an application. Now, an application can have multiple ad units. So you might, and I originally wanted to have like each form with a different ad, but then it was difficult also because of the issue that the ad is superimposed. So I went for a single one. But I don't think the opposite is possible. And on iOS, there's no ad ID. Just the application has it's the application ID that matters.
Okay. So the question about InApp Purchase, but that's something we're going to cover next week, I believe, right?
No, I think it's later in the cycle.
Not next week?
It's in a month or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Next
week is Data Snap, REST, and backend as a service with Convey by some old programmer.
Anyway, the link to the demo that we have, the Capital app that shows advertising also shows in-app purchase. You can purchase not to have advertising anymore, which is kind of a standard approach. So that there is a full demo there for now.
Okay. I think I have all the advertising related questions answered. So yeah, in-app purchase, check out the States demo that Marco linked to there, and it has an example of that, and we'll have a sprint on that later. Okay, and you'd mentioned that you were made quite a bit more money with this than you'd expected. So
yeah, way
you
more.
never know.
I was expecting like, I don't know, $10, $20 a month. It's 10 times, even more than 10 times as much. So it's interesting. Of course, I mean the application has a good following. The version with the ads on Android has about 10,000 people, 10,000 active users. So it's a significant number. Of course, nothing huge. It's not in the millions as the popular games go to, but it's still a good number. And I also suspect that it depends on the type of application and the users. Maybe kids, when they see advertising of another game, which is a very popular form of advertising, they probably click on it more often than their parents would. So whatever, but yeah, the numbers have been quite impressive.
And it's a pay per click when the user interacts with the ad, not just for
it is pay per click. That's true on both networks. It's not display. You get information. You get like information on how many times an ad was displayed, but the only payment you get is per click.
What was the answer to the unique? Reusing an ad ID or having a unique one for each app? I didn't get. I was typing answers to the other ones.
No, you can. A single application can have multiple AdMob IDs, but the AdMob ID is unique to one application.
Okay. What about for iOS? Same thing?
iOS, there is no ad ID. iOS is just the application ID. There's no extra property to fill. That's why I'm using the ad unit and just filling it for both platforms, because on iOS that value is ignored. So you don't have to if-def the ad ID. Just forget about it.
And I want the component where I just put it in the app and I just wait for the money to come in. I don't want to have to build an app that actually does something or it creates a lot of interest or a lot of people use it. I just want give me lots of money.
Well, that's yeah, you can print the money. That's a different story.
and just for a note, Marco, in the Q&A log, Thomas Vettel left you a private message.
Okay, I've seen that.
Yeah, I can't answer it because it'll answer all because he had to leave. So, okay.
I was just exploring some of the components of FireMonkey, and you can create some pretty amazing stuff really quickly. I was playing with the color picker and live binding things up, and I mean, you could make a really interesting app pretty quickly and throw some ads on there. Who knows what might happen? You never know.
Yeah, yeah, the issue is to find an audience. I mean, I think this specific app, and again, the idea, the model, that is completely my son's ideas. I wouldn't have done anything like that because it's also kind of nothing happens. I mean, the application is really, you pick one of these new images every 30 minutes, and for the 30 minutes in between, the application really does nothing. You can browse your images. That's it. Then, of course, you don't need to wait 30 minutes. You can just stop it down. It just tracks the time, even if the application is stopped. And then when 30 minutes go by, you can reopen the application and click on it. That might also be the reason it's making a lot of money with advertising, because it's an application you use often for a very short amount of time, and so it might be good for the advertising side.
Yeah, there's a whole theory behind how to properly engage with users to maximize ad revenue, but that's another webinar in itself. There.
Yeah, I've done absolutely nothing, and from the money it seems. So it's probably I'd say that probably it's like a few people start downloading it, passing it around. It goes up and sound like this week stats in some area, and of course Lego is a popular topic, so that helps. But my impression, even looking around, I mean, I follow the industry a bit. I just tend to play with the popular games to understand the scenarios. To me, there is an amount of randomness and luck that is extremely high. I mean, I've read all the description of how the guy who did the flying with the Flappy Bird used techniques to engage users. It's like placing buttons in the wrong place. I don't think it was completely planned, or you can plan something like that. It just happens. And speaking on this, the thing that we noticed and was announced last week is that for the first time ever, a mobile game software house, which is Kings.com, the authors of the extremely popular Candy Crush, that software house made more money than Nintendo software, which is one of the largest software houses for video games. Because unlike Sony and Microsoft that mostly rely on others for the games, and Nintendo has extremely, I mean, they own Mario Bros, they own all these characters. So they are very big on the games themselves, and the fact that such a huge software house is being surpassed by a single game on phones is really a sign that the business is really going in that direction.
One of the things about Candy Crush that I think really helped it was that it was available on both iOS and Android right away. It wasn't one of these that rolled out on one platform and then later the other. And I think I know as a user myself, I like to have the apps on my platform. I have multiple devices. I want to have my apps on all the platforms I use. And that's a really important thing.
Yeah, and for example, speaking of how these get expected, the game that was popular last month, the 2048, the one you have to like do the powers of 2, it was published on iOS only, and I checked last week, it still does not, I mean, it was like a huge hit, it was the most downloaded application on iOS, and it does not exist on Android. There are like 1,000 clones of the game, because the game logic is simple, but the original from the same company is not there. So I guess they were taken by surprise by the popularity.
Benefit Rad Studio and App Method, you just build
it would have been easier for them to build. Absolutely. I mean, this very simple application I have hasn't got only the folder manage, the file/folder management. So there are 2 if-that for the folders, because I manage files in a slightly different way. That's the only difference.
Yep. Great to have you here on the Sprints, and we'll see you again next Tuesday at same time, same station. You're already pre-registered for the whole series of sprints between now and the end of July, whether you come and go. And again, the landing page has replay links if you miss any of them.